Welcome to Navigate Podcast, everybody. I'm Tim Austin, and this is the podcast designed to take the guesswork out of transition. Whether you have a transition looming in your future or you're trying to make sense out of a past or current transition, this show's for you. And in each episode, we introduce strategies and tools that individuals and teams like yourself can use to effectively navigate seasons of change. We're all about leveraging the challenges of change for optimal growth. And we are back with part 2 of my conversation with Jeff and Sara Simons and Eve Austin on the art of transition. Sometimes we just like to throw out some ideas, strategies, lessons learned related to our personal stories of navigating transition. And this is mostly what today's episode is about. How we, who some might call transition experts, are still trying to live out the message. So let me encourage you to make a mental note, or if you can, write down a new practice or strategy that you'd like to take away to try out in your personal transition season. Jeff and Sara are both professional coaches and cross-cultural companions to global workers in major transition. Sara is also a coach and founder of The Way Between, where she and Jeff create resources and workshops using life planning tools, art, and movement. And they are a family on mission with their 2 kids, now residing in Denver, Colorado, after 12 years of overseas work in 3 countries. Sara recently published a book called The Art of Transition, which we discussed in part 1 of this conversation. By the way, make sure you listen to the end of this episode because Jeff and Sara wanted to share a free resource from their book. So, thanks for tuning in to part 2 of this conversation called The Art of Transition. Well, as we just have a few more minutes left, and we wanted to kind of end on a little bit different note and shift to, we call ourselves transitions coaches, and we work with people in transition. Eve is a counselor, but works with a lot of people in transition, and you guys do the same. I do that, but we all kind of have our, background and histories and resources that we've and strategies and tools that we've used and come about, and have kind of added to our tool belt along the way, whether that's by, trial and error, failure, success, the insight and teaching and training of others, resources and tools we've gained along the way. But just want to talk about maybe a few secrets of the trade in terms of navigating successful transitions. What have been highlights for you? And because much of this has come about by personal experience, and maybe we can just kind of throw some things out there for our listeners, and hopefully there'll be a takeaway for different people, different things for different people in terms of the seasons they're in and the situations they're in, the type of transition they're in. But we'll go ahead and start with you guys. Well, we can just put it out there. We won't start with anybody. Let's just throw it out there.
Who wants to go first?
Who wants to go first? What are some few tips and resources that can help?
I would love to hear from you. Like, what are because you've been back longer than we have.
Okay. Well, I still come back to how can I live this out even when I'm not in a major transition. Like, it's been 5 years now, almost 5 years since we've transitioned back from our overseas assignment back to California. Wow. And I think maybe there's probably, if I could come up with a list, I don't have a list now. I've had multitude of lists that I've come up with and checked some things off, and then I add another one. But I think if I could compile all those lists and number them and see how many there are, I'm sure I have a few things that are out there still that need to be checked off, that need to be done, that I need to engage with. So I think transition can be prolonged. It often is prolonged. And I think that for me, one thing I've learned is just the more you have roots in a place and relationships in a place and roots in a place, and a lot of time invested in a place, I think that just intensifies a transition season. Times it can prolong it, and not necessarily in a bad way, there's just a lot to process there. And so for me, I think there was so much, my identity being wrapped up in a place, in a title, in a role that I had served in different capacities, but still in general, I'd served in that role for, 20 years or so. And I think that, then coming back, transitioning back to the States, which, is supposed to be my native land, my native homeland, but it doesn't feel like it. So there's so much. And I still go through those seasons when I feel like, man, I just want to jump on the plane and go back. But I think that just recognizing and being aware of that this is a process, and it can take a long time to process a lot of grief, a lot of loss, to celebrate a lot of things as well, with gratitude, and to cultivate gratitude. I think that's one of the things that I've, a tip, that I would give is, no matter where you're at in transition and how hard it is and how challenging it is, cultivate gratitude, find ways to cultivate gratitude, enjoy the simple things. Yeah. And that the little gifts of just daily life that God gives us, and make gratitude in that way. And it goes a long way in helping to sustain us through uncertainty. So that would be one area.
I think that's a great one. I this isn't just the kind of improv, goofy, comedic side of me, but I feel like I find myself in the place of having to simply speak permission into global workers' lives, to let their shoulders drop and just have some fun and do some simple exercises on gratitude. But especially in transition, like all of us, we just get so serious. And it's a lot to take in. It's a lot to process, right? But we can tend to, just really put a heavy wet blanket on us that's not necessarily needed. The transition kind of throws extra weight on us anyway, right? But those times to just stop and breathe and have gratitude, I think that's great. Yeah.
I was just thinking of the metaphor of the ocean. In Tajikistan, we were landlocked. So we were far from the ocean. I had to use my imagination for all those years. And actually here in Northern California, we're still a few hours from the Pacific, but I just think it's such a powerful metaphor. And Ruth Haley Barton actually uses it in her book, Sacred Rhythms. And so I like to think of, that the rhythm of the ebb and flow of the ocean, every 24 hours, there's going to be a high tide and then a low tide. So there's these things that you can bank on. But also with the ocean is, how powerful it is. And it can be unpredictable, of course, when a storm comes up, or a big wave, builds and then crashes, those kinds of things. So sometimes, in the middle of your transition, it absolutely feels like a tidal wave, right? Because you're just drowning. That wave crashes over your head. But I call it face the wave. And as a way to encourage people just to not ignore it and pretend or deny it or whatever it is that you think might help it go away, because it's actually not going away. But if you face the wave, you can see how big of a wave it's going to be, and you can actually even back up the beach to higher ground and not get drowned by that big wave, which is, I think, what you're saying, Jeff, about take time to just play and relax and, just exhale, all of those things that can really help us to not just feel like we're out there in the big waves and it's going to pull us under, because we are taking a break, we're stepping back from it all. So I love all the really anything in nature and the way that the Lord has provided us with endless metaphors and endless, ways to see how he works and to see how he wants to work in our lives. And we see it in nature, 1,000 different ways if we're looking.
Yeah, Eve, that reminds me too, when I was talking to you on an email a few months ago, and I was talking about how I encourage people to, engage their body, go for a walk, or just shake it out. And the line that stuck with me is you said, blank it out. Like, what works for you? Like, shout it out, jump it out, run it out, walk it out. It was just like that real simple, just fill in the blank with what works for you to actually engage your body. And all of a sudden, like, the list was incredibly long, like, write it out, color it out, cook it out, blank it out. It was like, these are things that we do, but until we're actually mindful to do them or to need to do them, sometimes we're unaware of the power that has in our lives. And I think in May, when, we were experiencing our third cancellation of our flights, and we were going to be homeless, and it was COVID. If we got COVID, nobody would want us. My anxiety was rising to new levels, and I just remember like packing up the boxes and going, okay, I don't know what this is going to look like. And I had to daily remind myself it's going to be okay. Like you're even talking about, like facing the waters, facing the ocean. It's going to be okay. And a friend of mine was just doing these like really simple breathing exercises on a podcast that I was listening to too. And that was just, for me, that was really grounding and really helpful. And it was some of what I help other people in, but it was that reminder, like, okay, this is going to be okay. This is the way that we need to just one baby step at a time. Don't look at the huge elephant, take it one little portion of it at a time. And we had so much uncertainty. We just didn't know what was going to happen. The stress levels were at a crazy all-time high. And so recognizing, though, with some of these tools too, they're more about being conscious of them and filling your tool belt for when you need them.
Right.
Yeah. Like Tim was saying, with gratitude, I think that was my march, and ever since, really, my my lesson from the Lord is like continue to focus on what is good, pure, lovely, excellent, and praiseworthy. And I would just say that over and over again in some of those stressful times. So equipping yourself with knowing transition is going to happen in all of our lives, and equipping yourself with those tools can be really powerful for when you need it.
Yeah, that's good. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Good. Well, some great takeaways, you guys. I love this. And I know we could talk about so much more.
Yeah, I think we could.
Next episode.
Yep.
Next time.
I've got a good list here.
Yeah, we'll keep going. I think we could just do that. Just keep going with the list, But we really, really enjoyed our interaction today with you guys. And
thank you. We did too.
Yeah, yes. And look forward to just how everything is continuing to develop, and how God is going to continue to use you to resource workers and leaders, and obviously folks in transition. One thing I do want to say is, and just give a heads up to our listeners, to be looking out on the show notes. We've talked about taste and see. Be looking out on the show notes of this episode for a way that you can interact with the new book that we've talked about today, The Art of Transition. And Jeff and Sara have agreed that they'd love to share a resource with us. And so be looking out for that. And they can go to you once that is made available. They can head over to your website as well, which is thewaybetween.org. Do I got that right?
Mm-hmm. Correct.
Thewaybetween.org. And some great resources there. So check it out. And Jeff and Sara, it's been great to have you guys.
Thanks, guys.
Man, thank you.
Us.
Yeah.
Till next time, we got to do this again.
Hopefully next time we can all sit in the same living room and just put a mic in the middle. And
sounds perfect. Cup of coffee in
that's
hand.
what I'd like. Yeah. Yeah.
Good, you guys. All right. Bye-bye.
All right. Thank you, Tim. Bye-bye.
Well, I have no doubt that we will be back in future episodes with Jeff and Sara Simons. I just really appreciate them and how they are resourcing the global worker community with such valuable tools. Speaking of which, Jeff and Sara came through with their promise to offer a couple of free resources on their website. One being an exercise called Map Your Network, which Sara walked us through in episode 1 of our conversation. So check that out on their website, thewaybetween.org, and I'll also include the link in my show notes for you. I hope you're taking something away from this unusually shorter episode of Navigate. For those of you whose sweet spot is a 15 to 20 minute listen, we are trying to get there, at least with some of our episodes. So thanks for joining me today for this episode of Navigate Podcast. I've been your host, Tim Austin, and you can also find me hanging out on my website, EncompassLifeCoaching.com. If this has been helpful to you, would you mind rating the podcast, writing a review, and sharing on social media? And of course, you can always subscribe so that you're sure to get in on the next episode, and I'll catch you next time.